Welcome into the 32nd episode of Cleveland Sports Realm, and if you've been following along the last 10 to 11 episodes, I've been doing this in honor of certain players who have worn that number, and I feel like nobody better, obviously, with the number 32 episode than Cavaliers legend Larry Hughes. No, I'm kidding. Obviously, Jim Brown, Cleveland Browns legend Jim Brown, phenomenal, obviously, R.I.P., to Jim Brown, Browns legend, and I feel like that's obviously the only person we can really pick in order to have this episode in honor of a player, Jim Brown.
I had no idea where the hell you were going when you said Larry Hughes. I says, "Oh my, we're off to a rough and tough start this evening." Oh my!
But I would say to start out this episode from one Browns running back legend to another, I feel like we should start off this episode with the Nick Chubb news. You know, obviously this has kind of been, I wouldn't say a controversial topic in this town because everybody is feeling the loss of Nick Chubb. It's one of the players specifically in recent memory that I can remember being this really sad about leaving. You know, the last one I feel like I was this sad about was honestly Kevin Love about 3 years ago. But yeah, Nick Chubb is a Houston Texan. Was really hoping that the Browns could figure out a way to keep him in town, especially with having the two rookies and Judkins and Dylan Sampson here. Was hoping maybe we could have that presence that we've had in the locker room and in this city to be able to mentor those young guys and bring them on. And obviously Nick Chubb only really has one more year of, you know, good production probably left of him. But yeah, still very sad to see Nick Chubb go right now.
Yeah,
Jerome.
Absolutely. And we had talked about this. We had even posted a clip that actually went pretty viral. I wouldn't say pretty viral, but, you know.
A few thousand views.
Yeah, you know, a few thousand views about how we knew this was coming. And this has been in the works for a long time, but it's one of those things when, you know, you see the video the Houston Texans post of Nick Chubb and number 24 not wearing orange and brown, it does make you feel a certain way. And I think especially, maybe not for older Browns fans, and I would say even, you know, this to me was maybe, you know, older Browns fans, you know, remember Jim Brown if they're old enough, or they remember the Cardiac Kids, or they remember the Bernie teams of the 80s. So they have all those guys who they were emotionally attached to. But guys like me and you, you know, mid to late 20s and younger, and even folks in their 30s, this was like one of the guys. Like we have grown up with nothing for the Browns. You know, the emotional people we were attached to was quite frankly the kick returner, the kicker, and the left tackle. And
you could even say Joe Hayden, maybe throw him in there.
And this was the first skill position guy who was truly a Browns, I would say, legend. I think it's fair. And
absolutely he is.
You know, again, I'm not going to sit here and say that we didn't see this coming. We didn't know it was coming. But when it does make you feel sad. And, you know, I think Nick would have came back to the Browns had there was been any opportunity. I don't think the Cleveland Browns provided any opportunity. The Browns are usually pretty tone deaf to their fan base, but I would say in the sense of the owners coming out and releasing a direct statement from the top man, the top man and woman, and Jimmy and Dee Haslam releasing a statement. I think they do know how much of an impact he had on this fan base. And I know I said especially folks in our age bracket, but even older folks, because this was the first like true skill position guy. Oh my God, like, he is going to be great, and I think the ownership realized that basically in their statement. He's already promised a spot in the Ring of Honor, and I think that's well-deserved.
Oh, it absolutely is. I mean, he's an absolute legend, and to your point, Jerome, with that younger generation, I mean, I kind of feel for some of those kids that are in high school, you know, maybe even early college that are absolute diehard Browns fans, and the reason I say that is I can remember being in middle school, maybe even late elementary school when those Colt McCoy Browns teams were coming around, and those were the Browns teams that I just remember genuinely falling in love with. And I'm sure those high school kids right now, those maybe early college, even some of those middle school kids that have grown up, continue to grow up, and they fell in love with Nick Chubb. Like, that's the player that they probably fell in love with, between him and Myles Garrett, obviously, that they fell in love with and made them fall in love with the Browns. So this is their first real sense of heartbreak, I would say, with a player leaving. And let me just tell you guys, it does not get easier.
No, it doesn't. I mean, as bizarre as this sounds, I think, as far as playing for another team, I remember, I just pointed out, we grew up with some pretty destitute Browns fans. And I remember, personally, for me, my favorite all-time Browns player still to this day is Josh Cribbs. And I remember in 2012 when they drafted Benjamin, you kind of saw the writing on the wall. And then you saw Josh Cribbs, leave and depart in free agency and end up playing for the Colts and Jets. And then that was pretty much it. But I remember being at that time I was, I'm going to date myself here. I believe I was a sophomore or junior in high school. And I remember thinking, this sucks. And that was probably the last time that I, like, when I see a player wear another uniform, that it was like, that sucks. And, like, you talked about this, like, more than I did. I still was kind of arguing. I think Nick Chubb might have 1 year left in the gas in the tank. And I think you kind of said you thought this might have been it. He's coming off, 2 major knee injuries to the same knee. And then last year, obviously, comes back and breaks his foot. And, it sucks because he didn't really play well last year. And it was a super microscopic sample size. But I think, like, him leaving really, in a lot of Browns fans' minds, has nothing to do with how he really wasn't good on the field last year. It's just more you think of all those great years prior to. And I think, for me personally, being in that, not to keep rambling here, but for being in that stadium the night in Pittsburgh, shout out to our buddy Nate Martin. He got me the tickets that night, and we were in the PNC Legends Club. And, being 10 rows back from that and seeing it and just being devastated to see it in person, I think that night you felt like, oh, man, this could be the end. And, he got back, worked his ass off, and now he's going to try to do it again. And I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how he does down there. He's not going to get the lion's share of the carries, but I think at this stage of his career, we talked about this, he probably could have been a good complimentary back for those kids. And, for me, I would have rather had Nick Chubb and both the rookies. But when you have...
Jerome Ford's going to be making relatively the same amount of money that Nick Chubb is this year, too.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy.
Well, Jerome Ford still is less, and that's where it comes down to. When you have the albatross, things like this are the direct result of him.
The thing is, though, when it comes to Nick Chubb, is that some things go beyond the actual game of football for me. This Browns organization hasn't done one thing in the fans' interest in the last 3 years, ever since getting the albatross, basically. The only thing I can really think of is this current offseason is that they went back and they brought Flacco back because the fans wanted him back. Or, I guess you could look at the last few draft classes and they've clearly made an effort to draft an Ohio State player in what seems like most drafts the last 3 to 4 years. And I feel like that's been to appease the fans. But, this is the one player that we've been able to look at. And, of course, this wasn't Andrew Berry who drafted him, of course. But this is the one player that we've looked at who has worked his butt off. He took a pay cut last year just to stay in the city of the Cleveland. And that article he wrote in the Players Tribune could genuinely bring a tear to your eye for how hard that he worked, the path that he had growing up, the way that he basically said he felt like he was built for the city of Cleveland. And after a couple injuries, obviously, he's not going to be the same back that he once was. He never will be. But again, this goes beyond football for me. This is a player that the fans, I have not seen a fan base attached to a player like this in quite some time. And that includes Myles Garrett. That includes Baker Mayfield. That includes all of the players from 2018 on that's been part of kind of this Browns resurgence over the last, or I should say throughout that 4-year span. It's tough to swallow. And going back to your point earlier of how we kind of knew that this was going to happen throughout the offseason, it's one thing to know it's going to happen, and then it's another for it to actually happen. Because I'll never forget being I happened to be in Chipotle at the time. This is a random story from 2018, summer of 2018. And all the rumors were that LeBron was going to go to the Lakers. And there was always that sliver of optimism in me that was like, he might stay. And then I received the notification that he was leaving, and then that's when the emotions came out. I was pissed. I was upset. I knew that everything was going into a rebuild again. And obviously that's different Browns to Cavs, but it's the same idea of a player leaving and having the thought of it happening and then it actually happening. It sucks.
Yeah, no, it does suck. And look, like I said, it was there. It was in front of us, but then, like, to actually see him sign somewhere else, like, I was pretty surprised. Like, from his point of view, I thought his best path forward might have been, and I was wrong clearly, because I didn't think he'd get anything on the open market. I thought his best path forward might have been to follow his buddy's footsteps, Kareem, and what Kareem did last year. And you wait for that first major running back injury, and then you you go as a starter there. And I thought that might have been his best path forward.
I think the difference there, though, is that Kareem wasn't coming off a serious injury. I don't know if Chubb was ever going to be given an RB1 role anywhere.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. It's interesting because I thought that might have been his best path forward. Clearly, the Texans were willing to do this, and I mean, every time that it was brought up to Andrew Berry's attention, he basically said with a bunch of word flowers that, yeah, he's not coming back, guys. So, like, that's in a nutshell what he told us. So, like, there were so many warning signs to me that you just knew that he wasn't going to come back. It was just more like I didn't think he was going to go somewhere else this quick. Like I said, I thought he was going to sit around until 3rd, 4th week of September and get a deal that way. Didn't go that way. Happened the day before minicamp.
Yeah, because what was it, 2 weeks ago when Andrew Berry had said that it was looking like he wasn't going to be there? And then we had just seen a video on Twitter, and I forget who it is that had tweeted it out, but it was a video of Nick Chubb leaving the facility, and he was talking to the camera while he was driving away, and he was basically like, this is
it.
This could be. He very strongly insinuated that it was probably going to be the last time that he was leaving that facility. And that it was going to be tough for him leaving because he mentioned he has grown up here. He came here when he was 22 years old. He's leaving now. He's 29 years old. Over the hill for the running back right now. And he says he's excited for the next opportunity, but also said, as us Clevelanders know from watching him over the last 7 years, he's not an extrovert. He's like, it takes me a while to meet new people. It takes me a while to fit in new places. So while he says he's looking forward to that new opportunity, which I'm sure he's anxious about and a little bit excited for as well, I'm sure he's got to be nervous. We know Nick's not a talker. He's just a guy who puts his head down and grounds and pounds and gets the job done. So, I'm happy that Nick got an opportunity somewhere. I'm disappointed that he's not going to be able to finish his career in the brown and orange.
Yeah, I agree. But we do have to move on here now and talk about who is there. And we're recording this. We're back to regularly scheduled programming here. We're back to Wednesday evenings because I've returned from spreading the news.
Yeah, that's right.
I did leave last Wednesday. And so that's all been done with. And so we're back to Wednesday evening, which means the Browns have completed 2 out of 3 days of veteran mandatory minicamp. And the media is obviously all out there covering it. Obviously, this is the time of year where you see the media charting every single pass and people making vast overreactions one way or the other. I've learned not to do that anymore. When I was a kid, I would follow those videos and think they really meant something.
Oh, same.
I've learned they don't mean a damn thing.
Are you jumping into the Shador hype, though, with all the videos that are being posted?
You knew that was naturally going to happen.
Oh, of course it was. Yeah.
A source, a source who works there told me that, who I'm in communication with frequently, told me that, yes, Shador is doing good things, but mind you, it is consistently the second and the third team defense.
Right.
So everybody needs to hold their horses. I listen, go back and listen to our draft episode, probably 8 episodes ago.
Yeah, it had to have been.
I was ecstatic, and I still think he is going to be really good. But don't freak out because he's dominating camp. It's a good thing. Look, if it was the other way around, look, Dylan Gabriel's out there sucking it up against the second and third and fourth teamers.
That's what I've heard. He's
doing the opposite. So it's much better to have the position Shador's in. I just don't want to put the cart before the horse with Prime 2.0 here.
Yeah, no, I completely get that. But I was looking at another video. There was a couple great throws that he had in the red zone, and it wasn't like one of my big things with Shador when he was coming out is I always thought that he stared down targets a lot and he held onto the ball too long. And there were a couple videos that I saw him, start left to get the safety move over, and then he goes right, completes the pass, and wasn't holding onto the ball too long. That's great to see. But yeah, I mean, out of our 5th rounder, man, Shedeur Sanders.
No, that's good.
I'm starting to jump around a little bit to the hype here because I saw another video where he had stayed a little bit over. I think it was around like a half hour after practice. I didn't see too many other Browns players around him. I could be wrong. There could have been players behind the camera that I didn't see, but it looked to be like he was one of only a few players that were out there after practice, still getting work in. And if this slide to the 5th round really did humble him, then the Browns clearly got a steal in the 5th round. And then, Jerome, I have come around to your point in the post-draft episode where it is only a 5th and 6th round pick that we gave up. Like, what the hell?
Well, yeah, and that night that we did recap the draft,
I was furious.
You were very angry, and so to hear this all coming out of your mouth, I'm a little flabbergasted because of
This is what the Browns do, though, man. It's around this time every year that we start thinking, maybe if things start going a few good ways, maybe they can bust out 10 wins. This is like the second silly season of the offseason.
Yeah, no, I agree, but I sat here that night and I was all about it, and
I know you were,
and you challenged me with some good points, but I rebuttal with some good points, and so to now see you come this, I'm gonna take him back. I'm gonna lean back in my chair a little bit here. I'm startled.
I still don't know what that quarterback room's gonna look like come week 1.
Well, I think, I mean,
both the rookies are going to be here, and then they're picking either Pickett or Flacco.
I don't want to sit here and glaze myself, but I'm going to have to for a second. So far we've seen, from out there, all reports are Dylan Gabriel stinks. Okay, we all told you that, Browns. That was stupid. Okay. That was a waste of time. Shedeur looks good. Yeah. No reason he should have been slid to the
Also, I do want to say a couple of years ago when you were working training camps, and you still were working training camps for the last few years, but I remember a couple of years ago you came back and said that Deshaun Watson had thrown the best football you had ever seen.
He threw a beautiful ball.
And, look at where we are.
Exactly. So that's why.
But you just said you're going to glaze yourself over this. And now we're just saying that training camp points don't mean anything.
That's why I did preface all this with before. I'm not going to go nuts about the Shedeur stuff. I'm not. I'm going to hold my horses because you're right. You're 100% right. Deshaun Watson taught me that training camp doesn't mean anything. But then, on the contrary, I watched him look awful in training camp last year, and it absolutely translated. It translated perfectly last year. So you never know.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's so hard. Like, all jokes aside, I think it is so hard to sit here and watch that crap and see what actually translates, because I feel like it changes and it evolves year
it does.
to year what translates. Because again, I watched Deshaun Watson in 2000 and what was the year that he showed up?
He got traded here in 2022. It's been over 3 years.
Oh, okay, that year, yeah, I watched him look pretty good. Throw a beautiful ball in training camp, and then sit out 11 games and come back and stink it up. Last year, I watched him look awful, and it translated really good. So you don't know. You really don't know. I think Joe Flacco, so from what I've seen and heard, he's doing exactly what they hoped he is. He's really taking these kids under his wing. I saw he did some stupid thing with Dylan Gabriel on social media.
That was because Martin Emerson and I believe it was Grant Delpit had done that exact pose, and then Gabriel and Flacco went and imitated it basically as a joke. So it looks like that camaraderie is there, at least in the locker room. It's always good to see the players getting along.
Now,
it honestly is.
Another thing that's interesting is, I was told, from sources out there too, that Kenny Pickett's still getting all the QB1 reps. So that's interesting. Something to keep an eye on. Does Joe eventually take that over? We'll see. Does Shedeur hype train that Kevin's fully aboard? All aboard, please. Does that take over? I mean, who knows? It's so far away, but
I think we might see all 4 of them start at some point this year.
Ooh, I don't know about Gabriel.
He was drafted higher than Shedeur.
Yeah, if they want to be fair though, we'll see.
The thing that's really interesting to me is that obviously Kenny Pickett's been the one that's been taking the QB1 reps, but I haven't been seeing I mean, I've seen one or two, but I've seen way more Joe Flacco tweets from the Browns than Kenny Pickett tweets.
Well, that's them actually doing something right for once, and how we just talked about how
appeasing the fan base.
How you talked about they're terrible at that. That's 100% them appeasing the. I mean, there's a portion of this city that's in love with Joe Flacco.
Wacko for Flacco.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's them appeasing it. The Browns are actually, looking around and getting the pulse of the room once. I don't know one person who said, yippee, yay, Kenny Pickett, woo!
No, I actually remember I was driving home from work, and I got the update, got to a red light, and immediately had texted you, a few of our Steelers buddies as well, and your brother, and basically said, there's no way we really just traded a draft pick for Kenny Pickett. And they were all laughing at us.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So, the Browns are reading the room. They know, behind closed doors, yeah, Kenny Pickett's getting the ones right now, but they're not going to go out and publicly claim, because the Browns have been run through the mud enough this offseason, and most of it deservedly so. But
yeah,
they don't need any more of that negativity going there. And if they start tweeting a bunch of Kenny Pickett with flame emoji videos, people are just going to reply in the comments some very rude and nasty things. So they're playing it smart.
Yeah, I remember. I think it was 2021. I think maybe. I forget what year it was. Or you know what? It was going into 2020 because Baker had come off that tough 2019 year. And I remember every single post with Baker walking into the facility or completing even just like a quick out route. Like they would just tweet out QB1. And everybody was like, would you guys just shut up? He's coming off a horrible year.
Yeah.
I remember Anthony Lima from 92.3 had tweeted out a bunch of times. He's like, what? Every single position, are we just going to put CB1, RB1, LB1?
Yeah.
Like all the positions and then number one just based off of where they are on the depth chart. But yeah, no, they actually are, to your point, Jerome, they're finally appeasing the fan base. But unfortunately, it's not with roster moves. It's just with tweets. Yeah,
but they got to start somewhere, man. They got to start somewhere. One other thing I wanted to point out. I saw Myles Garrett had said, and this plays back into our first discussion of the evening, that he basically campaigned for the front office to sign Nick Chubb, and it did not work. But he also did not directly come out and say it, but if you read between the lines, kind of talked about what made him shift and deciding to come back and be a Brown. And they asked him directly if it was Flacco. He wouldn't say directly. He smiled and kind of gave a bunch of other, jumped around it quite a bit. But it seems like Joe Flacco signing here actually did have something to do with Myles Garrett signing his record-setting contract extension.
I mean, it's either that or Myles Garrett's just basically saying it to say it, or saying it without saying it. I don't know what the best phrase would be there, but yeah, I don't know if Myles Garrett would come out directly and say, "Yeah, this wasn't part of the game plan at all." I don't know what I'm doing here.
Yeah, no, he's not going to say that either.
Right.
But I think Myles Garrett. I saw a video. He looks electric as all hell.
Oh my God! I don't think I've ever seen him run faster. Did you see that drill?
Yeah, I tell you. You know why he looks great? All that extra rest he got from missing the voluntary workout.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I had to throw that one back at you. I had to get you with that one.
If you listen to last week's episode, you know what that's about.
Yeah, absolutely. Kevin and I didn't necessarily agree on
his attendance
Myles
or
Garrett's
non-attendance
attendance of OTAs. Yeah, like I said, we don't need to go down that road again, but all the guys who are veterans, the only veteran group I think is important is quarterbacks, like I said to you.
Yeah.
But, hey, I'm glad that everybody's there. Everybody's participating.
Deontay Johnson's there. Can you believe that?
Yeah. That's a guy who should have showed up to OTA. Like David Njoku not being there, don't care. Myles Garrett not being there, don't care. Joel Bitonio not being there, don't care. Deontay Johnson, your ass should have been there. The fact that the first appearance you made was at the vet let me tell you something, pal. You are not Myles Garrett, Joel Bitonio, and David Njoku. Like the three longest tenured Browns who've been around forever. And you
not drafted by Andrew Berry either.
And you think you're on their level because they skipped OTAs. You did too, man. It does not work like that, Deontay.
Yeah, Deontay's still like hung up on that good 2-year span he had in Pittsburgh, which was like 5 years ago. He's still hung up on that. Like he did have a couple good years in Pittsburgh, but like Dude, you have been nothing for like 4 years now.
Yeah, he said he's trying to overcome. He spoke today. Again, housekeeping. If you decide to skip ahead for some reason, this is Wednesday evening, so day 2 of mandatory veteran minicamp was completed today, and he said, he's trying to overcome that narrative of diva drama receiver. Like, dude, you have to put in some work to overcome that because nobody in the league thinks anything of you. And Deontay Johnson said it himself today. A big reason he's here is because Kenny Pickett basically advocated for him. Now, how much did that hold weight? I don't know. But
if he's QB1, it probably did hold some significant weight, seriously.
Yeah, and it's like, it's not like the Browns have this, like, outside of Jerry Jeudy, it's not like the Browns have, like, 6 All-Pros waiting to fill the room.
No.
Like they have Jerry Jeudy, who's a stud, who proved to be a wide receiver number 1, and then a bunch of unproven guys, and Deontay Johnson's right amongst that group, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, our second, you could argue that our second and third most reliable receivers are tight ends with David Njoku and Harold Fannin. And we don't even know anything about Harold Fannin, but from what we've seen in the videos, he looks pretty good, and then I trust his Bowling Green tape a lot, actually.
Yeah, because we talked about this when Harold Fannin Jr. got drafted. Like, he wasn't, like, tearing up Miami of Ohio and Kent State. Like, he was tearing up, like, Penn State
and Texas A&M.
Yes.
He tore up both of them.
Yes, absolutely. So that's exciting. And I'm just relieved and excited as a Browns fan that, like, dude, we're going back to what Kevin feels comfortable calling.
Yes.
What Joe feels comfortable playing. What the offensive line likes blocking. Like, it's just, if you're going to work and you're doing something that y'all like, it just makes going to work and doing your daily routines easier. Like, Joel Bitonio, as great as he is, he much rather, and he said this publicly, I'm not stealing words or putting words in his mouth. He said this. He would much rather block, the scheme that they're going back to with that 12 than block the albatross scheme.
Yeah.
And
I mean, we saw it in 2020, man. 2020, yeah.
I mean, if you're going to get excited about the Browns, the one thing that I think would be worth getting excited about is, hey, you're doing something that everybody's comfortable with. And, by the way, they've actually, and they haven't done this much since 1999, actually put good tape on the field running this system.
Yes.
So that's the one thing I would say to Browns fans, hey, it could be exciting. And the other thing I'd say I'm excited about is truly like I think Jerry Jeudy's going to have another great year. Like, he had pretty rough quarterback play last year and put up great numbers. Like, even if the quarterbacks aren't good this year, I still think Jerry Jeudy's going to do big numbers.
Yeah, I mean, if you're the wide receiver 1, you're going to be getting fed the ball a lot. So, yeah, I'm excited for how the offense is going to look because, again, like we were talking about last week, if they just don't turn the ball over and can maybe get a first down or two, they don't even have to score every drive, man. Just a first down or two, let the defense get some rest, because something that goes very under the radar last year amongst this fan base, in my opinion, is that we talk about that the defense wasn't nearly what they were in 2023, which they weren't, but a lot of that had to do with they had to have been on the field 70% of the game.
They were constantly out there.
They were constantly out there. So if you can keep them, get them some rest, have a few drives, what is going to do that? Running the ball.
Yeah, and I think, as devastating as it was, like, I watched, and I'm wearing it tonight, my 9-time national champion shirt. I saw a big piece of number 9 there was Quinshon Judkins, and as we mourned the loss of Nick Chubb moving on, like, to me, watching him at Ohio State, like, I see the way he runs in between the tackles and how physical he is. Like, and I'm not comparing them in any way. All I'm saying is there's a little glimpses of Nick in Quinshon.
I see a lot more. This was like my NFL comparison for Quinshon Judkins. I see a lot of Kareem Hunt in his game, how violent he is. I mean, Quinshon Judkins is an AFC North running back.
Yes.
He absolutely is an AFC North running back. And I'm excited, like I've said plenty of times, I'm really excited to see how him and Dylan Sampson work. Switching sides of the ball really quick, kind of talking about defense again, and we're going to stick with the rookies here. I think the X factor on defense for the entire year is going to be Carson Schlesinger. I think he's going to be the X factor on defense. Depending on how he plays, is going to be whether we get the 2023 Browns defense or the 2024 Browns defense, because a huge part of that 2023 Browns defense was JOK, and
Right.
he's not out. He's not on the field for us this
And
year.
he's not going to be.
Yeah, he's not going to be out there for us this year. So we need somebody to step up and take on. I'm not going to say Carson Schlesinger as a rookie is going to be JOK, but if you can give me, I mean, this is low, but 60 to 70% of JOK, I'm feeling confident in the defense.
Yeah, I also like that, there is, I like that. I like some of the things they did, and I mean, look, they didn't have any money to work with, and I think they did.
Which is their own fault.
Yes, it is. I think they did okay this offseason, so we'll see what happens there. One last thing I wanted to get is the albatross is there.
Yeah, I did see that. I saw a picture that was it Cameron Justice that tweeted that out.
Yeah, and I saw it on Fox 8 last night during the Ken Carman sports segment. He's there. Like, he's in the building, but I've been told from a couple of different people he is not like
around the team.
He's not a part of it. Like,
yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Somebody who I trust very, very much told me that he was walking by the weight room one day, and all the guys were over there. The old linemen, the tight ends, the receivers, backs, quarterbacks, all that. And they're all in the weight room working out. And he's on the complete opposite side of the weight room by himself, just standing there. So, like, he's in the building, like, but he's not. It's weird, and I don't know.
There must be something like in the contract or something genuinely to where he has to be around the team in order to receive those guarantees or something. There has to be.
Yeah, you might be right on that. And to your point, the picture that Cam Justice from Channel 5 tweeted out.
It wasn't near anybody.
I'm sorry, and maybe I'm being dramatic. He looked like he would have been rather ran over by an RTA bus than be out there. He looked miserable to be out there.
You would think that he would be at least around, like even just on the field. Obviously, he's dealing with that injury, so he's not going to be participating in any of the drills. But you would think he would be around the quarterbacks. If if you were a genuine team football player, which we know he's not, but if you were, you would at least want to be around your position group and at least just show, hey, I can't be with you guys, but I'm going to be with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder maybe, I mean, this as sick as this sounds and mean as this sounds, I wonder if maybe the coaches tell him, stay away. We don't want you talking to these guys.
Maybe. I mean, who is it that reported last year that just his presence in the building, it felt like the morale went down? I forget who it was that tweeted it, but I'm almost certain I saw that report.
Yeah, and listen, like the people that I've talked to, like I trust them. Like I believe everything they're saying, and everything we've seen in the past would add up to these things being accurate. And if he's gonna be there, like my thing is, it does make me like, I know the reason they haven't is because of financial burden, and I get that, but like it does make you sick that he is still on this roster. Like, he's there, and
Deshaun Watson's a Cleveland Brown, and Nick Chubb isn't.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of sick, in a bad way, like sick.
Oh yeah, no, I'm picking up what you're laying down.
And listen, I know that he has to be there because of the situation they're in.
Right.
But like, at this point, if he's gonna be that miserable and not want to be around anybody, you're forced to 100%. You got to keep writing him the checks, but like, take your checks and go home. Like, basically, if you're going to be that kid where all the other kids are playing at the recess and you don't want to participate, then take your little ball and walk home.
And this isn't even the first time that we've seen Deshaun not even want to be around the team. I know this was actually a pretty controversial topic amongst the fan base, but when he had his injury, I want to say it was in 2023, I want to say. And I want to say the Browns were facing the Rams in L.A., if I remember this correctly, but he was in a suite. Yeah. You remember that? And then it was like a week or two later, Dak Prescott had a boot on his leg, but he was on the sideline.
Yeah,
for the Cowboys.
That got a lot of national.
That did. It did. And honestly, rightfully so, because it's a very similar situation. Dak Prescott is a leader. He wanted to be with his team. Whether you can argue whether he's a winner or whether he's a loser, whatever you want to argue, Dak Prescott's a team player at the end of the day, and Deshaun Watson isn't.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And like I said, if if they're look contractually, if he has to, like you said, if he has to be there, fine. But if he's gonna act like, the spoiled brat kid and sit there and pout and not partake with the rest of the kids playing out in the field, literally, then go home. Like,
I agree.
Literally, they're trying to get past him, and I do think his mere presence being there brings everything down. Like, they're trying to move on. They have a young team with some veteran guys, and they're trying to move in a completely different direction and move past the albatross, and him being there weighs everything down. So just, I think for the betterment of everybody involved, for him, for the team, just send him home.
And the worst part is we're still a few years out from being done with this, from it affecting the books.
Yeah.
We're still a few years out.
Oh, absolutely. All those restructures. Remember when we kept kicking the can down the road and you guys, some of you out there were tweeting the laser eye emojis? Yeah, here, the coffee can has now come to roost, guys.
Which, could you make an argument that Andrew Berry has been a better GM for the Texans than for the Browns?
I heard that. I saw that. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was funny. It was funny on social media. I don't know if I necessarily...
I mean, he's rebuilt that entire Texans team.
Yeah, with all those picks. Yeah, absolutely. But anyway, that's it for the Browns.
Which is funny because if you're listening, if you could see our rundown, the Browns take up maybe 15% of it.
Yeah.
And we're almost 40 minutes in.
There's going to be some things we're not going to get to today, and that's okay. All right, let's move on to the Guardians, who are not in the offseason. They're right in the thick of it, and things aren't going so well, to put it nicely. 3 straight series losses. I will say it was very nice that, on a personal note, not really good for the team. They lost the series. In New York, I did attend the one win, which was a great game. And as you pointed out, Luis Ortiz, maybe his best stuff since he put on a Guardians uniform.
I think you could argue that's the best game the Guardians have played all year.
Yeah, that was a good one.
4-0 shutout in Yankee Stadium.
That was good.
I thought it was an unbelievable performance.
Unfortunately, they lost that series. They came home and lost the Astros series. And
I was in attendance for the Saturday night game. We actually went with
Go ahead, please show everybody what you got.
If you're listening on Spotify, you can turn on the video. If you're watching on YouTube, you're already looking at me. But got the Emmanuel Class A jersey giveaway. Went down with a few of our friends, Kyle, Robbie, and Brenna. Got down there. The game started at 4. We got down there at noon. Went to Harry Buffalo for some lunch, and then got in line a little bit before 2 o'clock to make sure we could get the jerseys, and we're in the stadium until about 7:30. It was a good overall day down at the stadium.
Yeah, it was good, except they did lose that game.
They did. It was a fun time.
Extra
but
innings,
they lost 5-3 in extras.
So then they salvaged the Sunday finale. Bo Naylor hits a home run, and then, boy, Terry Francona, he's got to be laughing somewhere on his because I heard today the Reds are going to bust Detroit. Tito's probably letting out one of his big old belly laughs with his hands on his big stomach because he went 5-1 against his old team this year, and he dominated them. And now they did salvage today, as again we're recording this on Wednesday. They did salvage today, and it was
win.
Big, yeah,
but the runs don't carry over.
Yeah, unfortunately. They scored more today than they probably will the next week. It was nice to see. Seriously, it was nice to see 11 runs. And look, my thing is, we've talked about it. Yes, I get too crazy game in and game out. Kevin, you tend to look more at series, but even that's not good right now. You've lost 3 straight.
I agree.
And the AL Central gap, as of this recording, is 8.5. So things aren't good. And now, I think you have a very, very key important series here against Seattle because if you look at the American League, the Tigers and the Yankees are way jumped out ahead of everybody, right? And you look at that, they're leaps and bounds ahead of everybody. And then the rest of the American League is just very much jumbled up. And right in that jumble, you find the Guardians, who, as of their win this afternoon, were back to a half a game out of the playoff spot. Well, Seattle's right around there too. They're right in that jumbled middle of the American League. And so you're playing someone who you are directly fighting for a playoff spot, tiebreakers, things of that scenario.
Yeah, no, these are actual big series.
That comes down to at the end of the year. I think, you've got to get back on the right track. I know that, playing on the road ain't easy. They got to go try to take 2 out of 3 in Seattle.
I agree with you. And Seattle's a tough team, too.
And they're good. And Cal Raleigh is having a hell of a year. And their pitching
he
is really, really good. And what's that spell? Trouble for us. But we'll see what happens.
We haven't even mentioned J-Rod yet.
No, no. Julio, the no-fly zone will be in full force.
Yep.
So that's a tough series. Look, that's a really, really tough series. But they got to do it. I mean, now you're getting to this point where these games really are very, very, very important. And like most likely, I'll go ahead and say I think the division's it's a long shot. It's a prayer at this point. You have directly taken 3 out of 4 from the Tigers. You'll play them 8 more times, but you're 8.5 back. Like you're probably going to be in the middle of this American League mess, fighting for one of these 3 wild card spots.
Well, what were the Tribe last year? Because at one point, I want to say it was July or August. I want to say it was July. We had like a 10 to 15 game lead in the division, and we had blown it throughout like a 1 month span.
Well, I remember,
but we obviously ended up holding on to it. But like, I still don't like these series are big. Like against this Mariners series is a bigger series. It's one of the bigger series that they've had all year. You could argue it's probably the biggest series since the Tigers series.
Yeah, I would say that.
And yes, you got to go in there. You got to try to take 2 out of 3. Getting swept is absolutely unacceptable going into Seattle. But like you said, Jerome, with how jumbled up the AL is right now, with all these teams fighting for only a few spots in the wild card, this isn't like the NBA where there's a play-in tournament. Like you got to actually make the playoffs here.
It's not the NBA where 90% of the people go to the postseason.
You got to win the series that matter, and I do think that this Mariners series is huge for this team.
Right, Seattle, as of the second of this recording, is 33 and 34. The Cleveland is 35 and 32. A couple good things today, and look, it's so microscopic, but let's talk about it. Lane Thomas, look, and is it fair to Lane Thomas what we're going to ask him to do? No, because he's battled injuries and he's been snake bitten all year. It's been really unfortunate. Lane Thomas has got to come back and hit immediately, and he kind of did this series. He went 4 for 8. He didn't start the middle game of the series, but he played 2 out of 3, and he had a 3-hit game today, and he had albeit, to be honest with you, a pretty lucky 3-run home run down the right field line that just snuck inside there. That right field wall is 325 down right field of Progressive Field. I think the home run distance was calculated like 329. Nonetheless, nobody remembers. It's a 3-run home run at the end of the day. Lane Thomas had 3 hits. Like David Fry, he's got to hit. He's not hitting so far, and it's not fair that we're asking these guys to come back, but that's where this offense is. And, you could blame whoever you want. My personal opinion, go ahead and throw it on ownership. Go ahead and throw it on the front office. They did not do enough for an American League championship team last year who was 3 wins away from a World Series appearance. They didn't do enough, okay? But this is what it is. This is the reality. So guess what? It's unfair to these guys, but Lane Thomas, David Fry, you just came back from major injuries, both of you. You got to hit immediately.
Yeah, and those were 2 ginormous pieces of the playoff run last year. You could argue 2 of the 3 best positional players during the playoffs last year.
Absolutely.
And up there as well is Columbus Clipper Brian Rocchio. But,
and Columbus Clipper John Kenzie Noel.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. But I also think Vogt's got to do a better job managing this team as well. He had a
rough week.
He had a pretty rough week, I thought, and specifically game two of this past series, especially when it was in extras, and we had not extras, but we had the option to either pinch hit or pinch run Lane Thomas, and I thought it was clear as day that we should have pinch hit Thomas.
Yes,
they pinch ran him and didn't end up getting a hit. And we left a runner on and end up losing the ball game. And I would have loved to see. We were facing a lefty at the time, and we left lefty struggler Nolan Jones in to hit, and instead of bringing in lefty masher Lane Thomas. I didn't understand that decision. I think that decision. I'm not going to say it cost us the game, but I do think it cost us probably going to extras.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And another thing is, look, you kind of have this like who's who basically from 6 to 9 in the lineup every day. Like the first 5 are kind of solid. Although that number 2 hole has been a black hole all year. Anytime they put somebody there, they never stick. Then they end up not hitting.
Yeah.
But you kind of got, at least your 3 consistent horses have been, Kwan, Ramirez, Santana. But every other spot's kind of up for grabs. But Daniel Schneeman's a guy who's hit the hell out of the ball this year. And I get it that if you look at his minor league data, nothing at all suggests that he's going to hit lefties. Nothing. But your lineup against lefties is putrid right now. And for one of your guys who's come up, and I'm not saying he's lighting the world on fire, but Schneeman has 7 home runs, and I think right around a 700 OPS, and he's hitting 248 on the year. Like, Stephen Vogt, give him a chance, man. Like, give him a chance. Like, Angel Martinez, I like Angel a lot, and I think he is a good player. Angel Martinez has been struggling lately. Like, every time that we face a lefty, it doesn't necessarily mean Schneeman's ass has to be glued to the bench.
Which does drive me nuts because Vogt in one of his post-game press conferences a couple days ago had said, I don't always look at the lefty versus righty, righty versus lefty. I think if you can hit, you can hit. Which goes against all of his managerial decisions.
Yes, I completely
goes against all of his managerial decisions.
And this is a guy, and right along the same railroad tracks you're heading down, I'm going to go on the same. This is a guy when he got hired said, I don't like platooning. All he does is platoon.
Yeah, he's even worse. I got upset with Tito with how much he platooned players and how much he was obsessed with those matchups. And now, obviously it's hindsight being 2020. Tito took 5 out of 6 from us this year, but I'd rather have the way Tito manages.
Yeah,
obviously, and I got frustrated with that from time to time. Vogt is annoying with the matchups, and then he'll have the random outing. He hates having a pitcher, it seems like, go past 70 pitches. And then what was it last? I want to say 2 weeks ago, he had Gavin Williams pitch 110 pitches through 5 or 6 innings.
Yeah,
the consistency is just not there with Vogt, whether it's the decisions he's making game to game or whether it's what he's saying and then what he's doing. It's just so much inconsistency to me with him. And obviously, it's his second year. He won Manager of the Year last year, but you would think he would learn from some of these mistakes.
Yeah, I will say I think Stephen Vogt is clearly a really, really smart guy, and I think sometimes he gets in his own. I think him and Albernaz tend to get in their own head.
I think he overthinks things.
And they overcomplicate simple things. Like, at the end of the day, it's a game. Like, Daniel Schneeman's good right now. Like, okay, yeah, every piece of data you could ever look at suggests that Daniel Schneeman's not going to hit a lefties. But how do we know if he never has a chance?
Yes, thank you.
We don't.
I agree. Yep.
We don't know. And, John Kenzie Noel, for example, he was a guy last year when he played every day in right field, he did pretty well. Then this year, you put him in just to hit lefties. Nothing in his data suggests that he was just going to be a lefty masher. There's certain guys I get it with. David Fry's data, every piece of data collected on him suggests that he hits lefties really well.
Well, even Lane Thomas. Lane Thomas hits righties average, but lefties, what was it last year? He was batting 300 against them.
Right.
It was
guys like that, okay, fine. But John Kenzie Noel, he's a guy, it doesn't matter who the hell's pitching. He's either going to hit a home run or strike out. His data all suggests that.
Yep.
And a guy with that kind of profile, to play him once every 3 days, I thought they did John Kenzie a big disservice this year. And if this is the role you're going to have him in, he probably should have been a Columbus Clipper a month and a half ago, quite honestly.
Yeah, I agree. To your point with the Schneeman thing, then if he's in Columbus, he's going to be seeing some righties. He'll get better at hitting righties. You're not going to get better at something if you don't practice doing it.
Right.
That was my whole thing with Kyle Manzardo last year, and now this team's coming around and they've been doing it relatively consistently this year. But I always wondered.
Fry's been back, not as much, but go ahead.
Well, but playing him in the field.
I thought you were
where I was going.
I'm sorry, I jumped the gun on you.
Playing him in the field is where I was going with that. Last year, it seemed like the only time that they would have Manzardo out there, I think there was 1, maybe 2 games that he had played first base last year, and I was like, how is this guy ever going to get better at fielding ground balls or digging the ball out of the dirt if he's not going to actually have practice doing it in the game? And now this year they've done it. He's gotten a little bit better of it. You still see the mistakes at first base. He's not Carlos Santana at first base. I'd rather have Los. But he got better at it, and now we can trust him more than we did last year. Right. You're not going to be able to trust Daniel Schneeman against lefties unless he has a couple shots against lefties. I completely agree with you, Jerome.
And that's the conundrum that they run into constantly as an organization. It's because they have this organizational philosophy where they never commit fully to redevelopment, which I do like as a fan because they're in it every year. They don't commit to a rebuild and let's just play the young guys and see what happens. But they also never decide to go with a team full of veterans. Like, we're really going to go for it. And they're like always playing this like seesaw game of, well, we're going to try to develop a little bit, but our top priority is still winning.
I do get it, though, because the MLB is the most unpredictable.
Right.
I would say when it comes to predicting the World Series champ. So if you can put together a competitive ball club and squeak into the playoffs, you will always have a shot at winning it. So I understand that logic, but also at the same time, you cannot have a bottom 5 payroll year in and year out and actually expect to keep doing that.
Right. It makes it really, and I see a lot of people lately have been super critical of the front office, of Chris Antonetti and Mike Chernoff. I think these guys have one of the hardest jobs. I mean, most years, the ball club's competitive, and they give negative budget, and they're told to make this thing competitive every year. And for the most time, they do that. But, I mean, I'd love to see if these guys had, like, Dodgers ownership budget or, the Steinbrenner budget in New York. Like, I mean, it's just it's frustrating, and that's like a more of a big picture off-season thing.
Well, they have made a couple bad moves too, though.
They absolutely have.
I mean, Yainer Diaz could be on this team. Blanking on the name, I don't know why I'm blanking on the name, but the Rays shortstop, third baseman,
Junior Caminero.
Got rid of him.
No, and they've made more bad moves lately than good news.
And it used to be the I would say up until 2020, probably up until the Miles Straw. Honestly, probably up until the Miles Straw move, they had I had blind faith in them. I literally, every move they made, I was like, oh, it'll work out. Even the Kluber trade, I was like, this pitcher, like I remember you being pretty upset about the Kluber trade.
I was very upset.
And then I was like, well, we got a fast center fielder, and hopefully this pitcher who throws 100 miles an hour turns into something. It was Emmanuel Clase, the best closer in Tribe history.
Yeah.
So I mean, they had earned the benefit of the doubt, and I felt that they had earned the blind faith of the fan base. I would say the last 4 years, I would argue against that, though.
Oh yeah, no. They've definitely lost their touch as being perfectionist. I think they still overall make more good than bad. Like one move, it's really just keeps looking better and better by the day. And I know he got hit around pretty good on Monday. Was Luis Ortiz, but unloading Jimenez off the books looks super intelligent. The problem is they didn't really reinvest much of the money, and in the sense of the money that they did reinvest, let's take a look at that. Carlos Santana. Now, I know I'm a total Santana fanboy glazer, but I don't think you could ask for much better of a season from a guy who's 39.
No, I don't either.
I mean, he's been awesome, I think, for what you're getting out of him for his age.
And going back to the trade that you're saying, the Tribe made out, you feel like, no, I'm not going to say like bandits, but you feel like they've won that deal so far, the Jimenez deal. I would also argue, I was the first one saying that Josh Naylor trade was one of the worst trades I could have ever imagined, going to get a pitcher with like a 7 ERA in the minors and whatever. And Carl Willis he must just be like seriously a genius, because Slade Ciccone actually looks pretty solid. I still say the jury's out on that one, because Naylor's been hitting pretty well in Arizona, but Slade Ciccone, the first few times we've seen him, I've been impressed.
Yeah, last night he was awesome.
Yeah,
I mean,
I thought he got screwed on a couple calls. There was a strikeout. He should have got the guy looking, and then I believe the guy ended up getting a base hit.
Yeah, absolutely. His breaking stuff is filthy.
It is good.
And if they can get him to throw that breaking stuff for strikes more consistently.
Well, just with more control, I would say. Because the movement on it is insane.
Exactly. Those two trades both look really good very early, but they both look really good.
I would say they've either broke even or won both of those trades.
And also, it also helps the fact that, like, look, we've discussed it at nauseum on this podcast, at nauseum. Starting pitching is uber expensive now. I mean, look, it's insanely expensive. Like, below average guys go for $15 million, and so we know that disgusts them. That makes Paul Dolan and Larry Dolan roll over in his grave.
Well, especially when you're talking about those guys only pitching for you once every 5 games.
Exactly.
Like that's where I don't see the value, and that's where I do agree with the Tribe front office, is that I would not spend, especially with I would not spend that money on the pitchers. Like those Tanner Bibee deals, you got to get those done.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, like, getting Luis Ortiz and Slade Ciccone, two controllable young starting pitching who you could have for cheap for years to come. Now that makes Larry Dolan be happy in his grave.
That's right. He's looking down smiling.
Right, exactly. All right, let's talk about the two guys who are piecing this all together. And really, we could talk about this back on a podcast if we did this thing in 2015 or 16 or 17, because they were key parts back then. It's weird. It's 2025, but Carlos Santana and Jose Ramirez. Santana, we already kind of touched on, but I did want to shout out my favorite baseball player of all time one more time on his exactly to the day 15th year anniversary in the big leagues, a grand slam. Really cool moment for Carlos, and also cool his third time he did it back in the uniform that he all started in.
Very cool. Yeah. Very cool. We've been watching Carlos for
forever.
20 years almost.
15, yeah.
Yeah.
And this kind of put it in all
15,
perspective
obviously.
for us today. Tim Stebbins, MLB.com, who does a great job covering the Guardians on the website, he said this today, and it's true. There was a quote. Manzardo said, "Man, Santana's been doing this forever," and he goes, and Tim Stebbins was like, he's been here 3 different times, and Kyle Manzardo goes, "Yeah, I know. I remember. I watched him when he first came up when I was in the 5th grade." That really put it all into perspective.
That's crazy to me. No, it is. It's insane.
So Carlos Santana by no means is ever going to make Cooperstown, but we will look back on his career, and it'll be remembered as a very, very good career, and someone who I absolutely think will go into the Cleveland Indians Guardians Hall of Fame.
I think so too. It's about 3 stints, World Series appearance. A couple All-Star appearances too, correct?
One All-Star
appearance.
But also like top 10 in a lot of, top 5 even now in a lot of franchise categories.
Yeah, no, he'll be in there. He'll be in there.
For sure. And then of course
Jose Ramirez.
The greatest
Guardian of all time.
Guardian of all time for sure. 37 games in a row on base, and I believe back to an 11 or 12 game hitting streak,
which is just unbelievable.
Now, his next goal here, his next feat, which no reason the way he's playing this year to believe he won't do it. Victor had a 45, Victor Martinez that is, had a 45-game on-base streak from 05 into 06. So it was done over the course of 2 seasons. Jose trying to do that in 1 season. Robeson RBI double today. And that's where I think the fan frustration peaks too, because you're looking at it at 32 years old. He might be having his best year ever, and he just put a little bit more around him, please.
Well, especially with the discount that he took. That's probably what he was expecting, is that the money that he did not receive when he signed that deal would be spent elsewhere to help him overcome that feat and maybe be a championship contender. It is disappointing looking at his career and knowing that it's probably not going to end with a World Series championship like it should.
Yeah, absolutely. And one last thing that I just thought I had to get in here about the Guardians. Jose Ramirez, speaking of him, one guy he really wanted to sign an extension here, I think would be a perfect fit to come back. If you're keeping Schneeman's ass to super glue on the bench against lefties, Ahmed Rosario, come back, buddy, and we got a spot for you to platoon against left-handed hitting, left-handed pitching at second base, shortstop, wherever. He's on a 1-year, $1.5 million deal. I don't think it'd take hardly anything to get him. I like that idea, and I hope that we do it.
I love the idea, too. I mean, he's one of those guys I feel like you might be able to even slide into that mysterious 2-hole that we were talking about earlier, the position that hasn't been working. Or the spot in the lineup that hasn't been working, I should say. And that's a guy in Ahmed Rosario who did bat out of the 2 spot for us for a few years and did it effectively.
And he's hit in between those 2 guys
before. He didn't have the power that you would want out of your 2 hitter, but he got on base. He had typically like a 280 to 290 average when he was here, more so closer to 280. But if you can go with Kwan's on base percentages, with Ahmed getting on base, you get 2 speedy guys on base with Jose coming up, Carlos behind him. I think you can solidify that front half of the lineup, and then bottom half still not that great. Probably isn't going to be great by the end of the year, but you have options at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, that'll do it for regular topics. Derek, I know we're running over there, buddy, but we're still going to have to do our odds and ends. You're not going to walk off on us, are you? All right. He shook his head no. He's still going to be here. Okay, we are going to run a little bit over. Had to make sure the man making sure everything happens behind the scenes wasn't going to quit or, say, what the hell, you guys you normally go an hour. But Anyway, all right, let's get into odds and ends, Kevin. First thing, Darius Garland, this mysterious toe injury, we didn't realize how bad it was, nor did anybody. He had surgery, and the Cavs were vague on this. Some reports saying he's not going to be ready till the beginning of the season. Some say training camp. Either way, I didn't realize this toe injury was that bad that is going to have a surgical operation on it.
Yeah, and that he would be out this long due to a toe injury. You know, I remember I was probably the first one when he had been ruled out for a couple games that was calling him, for lack of a better term, not my exact quote, but I was calling him a wimp for what was going on with him. And I feel bad. I'm sorry, Darius. I didn't realize what you were going through there. I take everything I said back. I hope it's a speedy recovery. And I hope, come October, probably closer to November, it seems like, probably midway through November, hopefully we're seeing you back out on the court. And definitely hope it's a speedy recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. And then two other things, both the hockey season and the basketball season coming to an end. Basketball 1-1 tonight, going back to Indianapolis. That should be interesting. Hockey, Florida Panthers over the Edmonton Oilers up 2-1. And Florida trying to repeat and go back-to-back. So those two seasons winding to a very close to coming to a close. And then golf's third major of the year, relatively close to where we record here in Cleveland, out there in greater Pittsburgh area. The U.S. Open happening in Oakmont Country Club, and like I said, in greater Pittsburgh. Looking forward to watching that this weekend. I mean, the way Scotty Scheffler's playing, I think it's hard to bet against him. But, Kevin, your guy, defending champ of the U.S. Open, Bryson DeChambeau, will be coming for him. And, of course, a bunch of other guys. So we'll keep our eyes out on that all weekend. That should be fun to watch.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it. It's been, actually, I think since the Masters that I've actually watched the major. So I'm looking forward to getting it back on the tube.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we missed covering the PGA Championship here because that was right around a bunch of other stuff going on, that more local stuff. But like I said, I enjoy watching golf. I try, we cover, the majors basically. I'm not going to give you guys, also the Memorial just happened, which obviously is the tournament that's, pretty famous and around here because obviously it's 2 hours down at Jack's place in Columbus. Nicholas, that is, excuse me. And then finally, one other odds and ends thing we want to wrap up with here. Kevin Durant has 5 preferred destinations. I mean, to me, this is a nothing burger. This guy gets traded every other year, and then whenever he gets to one of these 5 places, which are listed as the Heat, the Spurs, the Rockets, the Timberwolves, and the Knicks, when he gets to one of those in a year, he'll have 5 more preferred destinations.
Yeah, he'll have somewhere else he wants to be. And how funny is it that the Rockets are mentioned in that?
Of course.
The 2 seed in the West?
Yeah.
That's who you want to go to?
And then, ironically about that, you look at that, 3 of the 5 of those are 4 of the 5 of those are playoff teams. Spurs probably would have been had De'Aaron and Wemby not gotten hurt. And then on top of that, 2 of the 5 of those are teams that represented in the conference finals, in the Knicks and the Timberwolves. This guy, who the hell?
He just hops from bandwagon to bandwagon consistently. It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, he's been pretty close. I don't want to call him irrelevant, but ever since he left Golden State, aka the best team of all time, he has not been able to carry a team by himself.
No.
He hasn't been able to. He couldn't do it in OKC either.
No. And then, Kevin Durant should go and play the guy's all about himself. He should play golf. Really, that'd be a perfect sport for him.
I saw somebody had actually tweeted at him, basically saying his career's been nothing since he left Golden State, and he basically was like, "Well, I beg to differ." So he's like, "Well, how many championships have you won in the last, or basically since you left Golden State?" And he basically said, "This isn't tennis. This is a team sport. I did my end of it." That was the gist of what he had tweeted out. But it's like, okay, big time team player.
And by the way, tennis usually you play with a partner, so it is still a team sport.
You can play with.
Yeah, you also could play, singles. But golf would be perfect for him. He could be all about himself every single weekend. 4 rounds of 18 holes, camera all on him.
He'll probably want to join the best scramble team.
Yeah, that's good. That's good stuff. Kevin Durant would probably be a live guy, I bet. I bet you he would be. Kevin Durant would not be a PGA guy. All right. Follow us on social media on TikTok, Instagram, and X or Twitter.
At CLE Sports Realm.
Yeah, please follow us there. You can like and subscribe and rate to this podcast. The three of us, including the man who does all the work behind the scenes, the great Derek, all three of us would appreciate that. And, of course, YouTube, Apple Podcast, and Spotify. We'll talk to you again next week. For Derek, for Kevin, I'm Jerome. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great rest of your week, and go Guardians, and enjoy the U.S. Open.
Go Tribe.